Good evening, my friends.
Good evening, sir. Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Uh,
Good
Evening,
evening,
sir.
sir.
कैसे
Good
हैं आप
evening,
लोग?
sir.
कैसे
Good
हैं
evening,
रंजन
sir.
Good
सर,
evening, sir.
मैम, प्रीति
Good
मैम?
evening, sir.
ठीक है, प्रीति मैम?
जी सर अच्छे
ओके, रंजन सर?
Fine, sir. Very fine. How are you?
Yeah, fine, fine, fine. So I think our resource person Shakila ma'am has joined. Ma'am, Assalamu alaikum.
Yes, Sajid, I have joined. Yeah, I was just wondering whether you are waiting for participants.
Yeah, ma'am. There are so many people in the queue, so hardly 1 minute, ma'am.
Okay, no problem. I am very much here. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thank you. So, ma'am, should we start now?
I think you can start.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. So please mute yourself, my friends. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce Shakila ma'am. So a person, in fact, who is the pillar, you can say, in drafting whole national education policy. So we have heard a lot about various aspects of national education policy, but whatever we have heard, we have heard from the second-hand sources, second-hand sources information. But today we are fortunate to have that person who has basically drafted this whole national education policy. So if you see, Shakila ma'am, in fact, has been the OSD, that is Officer on Special Duty in the Ministry of Education. And she was the erstwhile secretary to draft NEP 2020. So besides holding a degree, in education and serving in Jamia Millia Islamia and SNDT University, she has a sizable experience of working in the ministry as well. So as I mentioned, she holds a PhD degree in distance education. She was gold medalist for Masters of Political Science, PG diploma in distance education, and holds a degree in law. She has to her credit a number of articles in international journals, books, contributions, and involved in the preparation of 11th and 12th plan and several government reports on education. So if you see, basically a teacher, but then went to Ministry of Education, where she was involved hectically in framing so many policies. One such policy was Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya National Mission on Teachers and Training. And that was such an ambitious mission in which, Government of India spent a crores of rupees to improve the teachers and teaching. And memoir was at the core of the hem of affairs in this whole scheme. So, in fact, she has been privileged to be a member of various committees of the Government of India, various state governments, UGC, various national selection committees for Fulbright fellowships. She has addressed several national and international conferences within the country and at UK, Australia, Thailand, Singapore, Malaysia, and Nepal. She is a mentor under the Women Mentorship Program under the aegis of Rising Beyond the Ceiling. That is one non-governmental organization, and she is the key member of that. At this juncture of time, she has been associated with one non-governmental organization, that is Center for Public Policy Research. It is a Kochi-based organization in which ma'am is offering her services so far as planning and policy related to the education is concerned. So it's very difficult to introduce ma'am just in 4 to 5 minutes. I think it's not possible. So her CV is just like a PhD thesis. I mean, keep on reading and it will not be over. So in a nutshell, if I say, ma'am is a beautiful combination of academic skills, academic caliber, as well as administrative skills. Besides, after the retirement from the Ministry of Education, I think not even a single day is there when ma'am is not engaged. But she is so kind enough for us, for the HRDC of Aligarh Muslim University, that whenever we approach, she honored our request. And this time also we approached at a very short notice, but ma'am somehow managed the time for us. So I'm highly grateful to you, ma'am, for giving time to us. And my dear friends, it's my humble request. Repeatedly, I am saying that whatever till now you have listened about NEP, you have listened from the second persons, but she is the first person. I mean, she has drafted the whole nation education policy. So whatever the doubts, whatever the confusions are there, I think ma'am is the best person to remove those doubts and confusions related to nation education policy. We have given her just one topic that is related to academic leadership, but anything if is there in your mind. So first listen to her carefully, her lecture, and ma'am is kind enough to give sufficient time to our participants. So she will give sufficient time. If there is any doubt beyond this topic, any doubt related to NEP, definitely you can remove the doubt. So with this short introduction, I think I should hand over the session to Shakila ma'am. Ma'am, it's over to you.
Thank you, Professor Sajid. And I believe that you've been having a number of sessions, and this particular session is basically devoted to touch upon academic leadership, governance, and management. But as Professor Sajid has rightly mentioned, you can sort of raise queries on any aspect of the NEP. And even before I jump into the topic, if any one of you really feel there is something that you would like to talk about on the NEP in terms of an observation or a comment or a concern, please feel free in the initial 2 minutes, because it's just about 6:37 now, maybe till 6:40, a couple of you, if you would like to raise any thoughts on the NEP, I could hear you all before I jump into my topic. So I'll just leave it open. Is there anyone who wants to make any observation or raise any concern on the national education policy? On any aspect, not confined to academic leadership. A couple of you, if you can do that, it will give me also a perspective and make me also understand what you all are hearing actually.
Ranjan sir, Manjeet ma'am, Priti ma'am, ma'am is kind enough. So please, you people are very active in this workshop. So as ma'am is mentioning, if you have any doubt or if you want to raise any question related to NEP, you can definitely. She has given you the liberty.
Madam, namaskar.
Namaskar.
I'm Ranjan Chaudhary from Assam. So we are having one issue that is in MDC, multidisciplinary course. We are specifically arts college. So, but the thing is that we have now, luckily we have geography and mathematics in our college. So we are offering maths and geography to our students as MDC. So there are certain colleges where there is not even maths and subjects like maths or geography or any other science related subjects or commerce. So what kind of MDC subject they will offer?
Actually, that is because we have contemplated that when offering multidisciplinary courses, it is not multidisciplinary courses which are available in your own institution. We are expecting institutions coming together in a collaborative manner, entering into a memorandum of understanding, and the guidelines for that is the UGC guidelines for transforming institutions into multidisciplinary institutions. So if yours is an arts college or a commerce college and you want to offer multidisciplinary in science, even if it is in engineering, even if it is in pharmacy or agriculture, any other college in a nearby vicinity, not even one, but more than one, who offer these courses, the institution, two institutions enter into a agreement. Unfortunately, what has happened is that NEP is being implemented in a very limited way by saying multidisciplinary only from the courses available in your own institution. So then you are actually denying the student any opportunity. You say your institution has at least got geography and mathematics as a subject. Others don't even have that. So when we implement NEP like that, suppose you have only arts, sociology, political science, economics, history, and so on, then you are not expecting multidisciplinary to be from these subjects. It has to be from science, or it has to be from commerce, or it has to be from business administration or pharmacy. So it is actually a very lopsided way that the NEP gets implemented. And I think repeated guidelines from the directives from the UGC asking institutions to enter into memorandum of understanding between two institutions to make multidisciplinarity a reality is somehow not getting fructified on ground. So that is really a limitation. So you all can carry forward that when you attended programs like this is being clearly told that you have to offer multidisciplinary, and multidisciplinary doesn't mean that a student from political science will take psychology. It means much beyond that. It means that somebody will take it from commerce, someone can take it, but we are not imposing. But if a student wants, you should be making it available. And I'm sure even in Assam and in other places, there are colleges around. One may be arts, another may be science, another may be commerce. So this is the way in which you can make multidisciplinarity. But yes, you are not the only one to have raised this. People in other workshops have also raised this, because we are very, I would say, short-sighted in the way we look at higher education. We think higher education is only confined to our own college and our own institution, and we don't think that we should collaborate. If institutions don't collaborate, how do you instill collaborative skills in faculty? How do you instill collaborative skills in students when at the institutional level itself, you do not understand the value of collaboration? So please carry this message. It's a very forceful thing that we are trying to say, that all over the world, it is a reality today that if you're talking about multidisciplinarity, it has to be through collaborative activities. And if a college like let us say AMU is a comprehensive university. So they have got all the departments that is there. So it's easy for them to implement. But colleges also have to implement it. And that can be done only by entering into an MOU. So please take that message back. Any other person? We can take one more before I can go on to my topic.
Ma'am, I have a question to ask.
Yeah, please.
Good evening, ma'am. I'm Rajesh Shekhar from Chennai, Tamil Nadu. My question is, I recently heard that NEP is bringing a UG degree 4 years course. After completing the first year course, if the candidate is not able to continue for the second year, you can get the certificate as certificate in philosophy or certificate in history like that. After 2-3 years of gap, again you can join, come back to college for second year. You can do second year course, again giving a gap of 2-3 years, getting diploma like that. Now my point is, normally we have a UG degree for 3 years. Now you are bringing to 4 years. After the third year, if a student completes third year, if he promotes to fourth year, is there any criteria that student should secure more than 80% above to enter into fourth year? After entering into fourth year, I heard that throughout the year, there will be research-oriented activities based on which the student can pursue his PhD degree directly. Now the point is, all the students we cannot expect above 80% to secure in the third year. If there is any criteria, ma'am, one has to secure more than 80%, 90%, only eligible to continue their fourth year UG degree. This is my doubt, ma'am.
Okay. So you raised actually a couple of questions, and that is the whole topic of multidisciplinary flexible 3-year, 4-year program. But let me give you a nutshell. The whole idea is that it is a flexible 3-year, 4-year program, and we are allowing the student an exit option at the end of every year, with a condition that if the student wants a certification, the student should have mandatorily completed the internship program. Otherwise, the student cannot get a certification. So we are visualizing a UG certificate, at the end of first year, UG diploma at the end of the second year, bachelor's at the end of the third year, and the fourth year there are two options. But before that, let me come to this exit and re-entry option. The maximum time limit that we are talking about is that the student has a 7-year window within which a student can take a break either in the first year or in the second year or even in the third year and decide to complete the course within that 7-year window. As I said, all the credits earned by the student would remain valid because we are storing it in a digital storehouse of credits, which we call the academic bank of credits. Now, this facility that we are giving is only taking into account that there may be, it is not seeing it as a norm that we will have large number of students doing it, but we did not want that a student who cannot pursue it in one go should be treated as a failure or a dropout. And therefore, this is an enabling provision that we have provided in the NEP. Now, coming to the third year, when we are saying the fourth year, there is one bachelor's with research where we are talking about a CGPA of 7.5 and above, which is about 75% and not 80% as you visualize. But that is because that student who is doing bachelor's with research is completely exempted from doing a master's to go in for the PhD program. Having put that kind of a bar, it is impossible to think of a free walk-in for any third year bachelor student to just go into bachelor's with research. So that bar is limited only for entry into bachelor's in the fourth year with research. Those who want to do bachelor's fourth year with a regular majoring, there is no bar, and that student can go in directly into the fourth year, just as the student has gone in from the first year to the second year to the third year, of course, with the minimum criteria of having cleared the courses of every year. That is the only thing that we have said. So this whole thing is to be understood as providing enablers for students to pursue with breaks. Also, that if they are leaving, they are not leaving with an incomplete degree, but with some certification. And we are visualizing minimum 3 models of an undergraduate degree, one with 3 years, such a student does a 2 years master's, one with 4 years, which is with majoring, will do a 1 year's master's, and 4 years with research, exempted from master's to join for the PhD program. That is the way it goes about. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So I think now for ensuring that we cover the topic of academic leadership, governance, and management, let me try to go into that topic itself. But as I always do, even though you may have attended several sessions on the national education policy, I would like you to understand the spirit behind the policy and also to understand why is it so important to talk about leadership and governance in higher education system. So coming firstly to the challenges of higher education in our country, you know that we have in a positive sense, one of the advantages is that India has a very large higher education system in terms of having 1,000 plus universities, some 47,000 affiliated colleges and 13,000 standalone institutions. These institutions are offering degrees across a range of disciplines. But what is seen as seemingly very advantageous higher education system, advantageous feature of the higher education system, there is inherent challenges when you have such large kinds of higher education system. And that emanates in Indian higher education from the fact that these institutions are very different in their, let us say, the character of that higher education system institution varies from one to another because of the kind of funding that they get or the jurisdiction that they have. So, you know, we have centrally funded institutions, which are central universities. You have IITs, IIMs, NITs, triple ITs, ICERs. These are all what we call largely centrally funded institutions, which are both CFIs and CFTIs, that is centrally funded technical institutions, and the general CFIs, that is like central university. Then the bulk of the institutions are the state-funded institutions, which are the state universities. Now, cutting across this, you have private universities, you have deemed universities, and you have affiliating universities vis-a-vis unitary universities. And then you also have standalone universities, which are what we may call specialized universities in given disciplines. So the character of each of these institutions vary in terms of their jurisdictional authorities, in terms of their source of funding, in terms of their applicability, in terms of the examinations and the calendars, academic calendars, and so on. What actually results from this is that though it is a large system, it is very complex as a organization. You cannot say that India's higher education system has got this kind of an organizational structure. Any questions at this stage? We can keep it for the last, because I will give you all about 20 minutes or maybe more if we have questions. So don't hold on, don't raise your hands for questions during the exposition that I am making. Now, this complexity of the higher education system is where the topic of academic leadership and governance becomes very important, and I'll come to that in a short while from now. But what is more significant to note is that these institutions are largely offering courses which focus on undergraduate education and which focus on silo-based education, leading to a lot of fragmentation. So the large higher education system combined with the fragmentation in terms of the disciplinary exposure is a challenge that has resulted in a number of systemic issues, and systemic issues that has undermined the quality of education, undermined the manner of effective and efficient governance and delivery of academic programs. So the balancing of the two factors calls for a certain degree of rationalization. And that is where the NEP has rationalized the higher education system in trying to say that can we identify and map higher education institutions by virtue of the function that they perform. So what is higher education all about? We know it performs three fundamental functions of teaching, of research, and of community engagement or social engagement or extension, as we call it. But largely the functions of teaching and research. So that is where the national education policy, when talking about the restructuring of the higher education institutions, recommended that can we call institutions as teaching intensive universities and research intensive universities. Teaching intensive universities are where the bulk of us today may be coming from, where we are focusing largely on undergraduate education. And in our institutions, in some areas, we do have PG as well as doctoral studies. But research intensive is where the focus is largely on knowledge generation and research and doctoral research and postdoctoral research, and in some disciplines limited to undergraduate education. So this two varieties of institutions are clearly defined by the function. So teaching intensive universities may be centrally funded or state funded or private or affiliating, it doesn't matter. We are only trying to map higher education institutions by the functionality. Now, the third category of institutions is where the greatest challenge comes, and that is from the affiliating system. So the affiliating system, which we had mentioned, we would have said that maybe in the 1950s, the 1960s, and 1970s, in the early 3 decades of India's independence, we would have thought of it as being an advantage because affiliating systems encouraged access to higher education. And so while it is difficult to open up universities across the length and breadth of the country and in every nook and corner of the country, we came up with this whole idea that we can set up colleges which are affiliated to a host university, and they will conduct examinations, they will carry out the curricular programs as per the university's direction, and that would be able to enhance access to higher education. But over a period of time, what seemingly appeared to be a very advantageous mechanism of affiliating to enhance access became really a very big burden because universities were managing some large number of colleges ranging between 500 to 800, in some cases even going up to 1,000 colleges. When you have such large affiliating universities, the direct damage happens to the quality of education, because the host university is unable in any way to handle the quality inputs of an institution. Does it have the faculty? Does it have the infrastructure? Does it have the teaching learning resources? Do they conduct quality education in terms of the teaching learning that is happening? All this is not monitored at all. Merely that the affiliating college follows an academic calendar that is given by the university, conducts the examinations at the same time, and the student who is completing a course is getting a degree on sort of awarded by the host university. And therefore, within an affiliating system, some of the very well established colleges, students coming out also have a university degree of the host university, and a not so good college, affiliated college, that student is also getting that certificate, creating a complete dichotomy in terms of perceiving the quality of education. Because the university remaining the same, the brand name remaining the same, the college from where that student has undertaken the study greatly determines the quality of that degree in a certain sense. So just hypothetically, I am a student of Bombay University, and Bombay University, some colleges are some of the state-of-the-art colleges, but there would be some colleges which are really not actually worth getting that kind of a degree. But that student also carries a bachelor's which is from Bombay University, as much as a college from which is of a very high class, which is also of Bombay University. Now, this creates a kind of a, let us say, a dichotomy, or a kind of a gap which needs to be remedied. And second is the fact that you cannot affiliate, and ideally you should not affiliate, something that we wrote in the 11th plan document, that we should not have a university which affiliates more than, let's say, 100 colleges. But then that would mean that what about those 700 or those 500 colleges? What will happen to them? So that is where the NEP has talked about many other patterns, which I'll come to in a short while from now. But I want you to sink in this whole problem, and you all also may be coming from some of the affiliated colleges, how this is an issue that needs to be tackled with. The next part of the challenge in higher education comes from what we are saying is a huge gap between academics and pure knowledge and knowledge-based education as against skill-based education and research. So there is what appears to be the serious lack of linkages between knowledge and skills on one side, between knowledge and research on the other side, between research and innovation on the other side. So these gaps have to be addressed, because when you look at knowledge in a very holistic manner, and when the policy is talking in terms of holistic multidisciplinary education, it means that a student who is the receiver of all this exercise of education has to be one who is equipped not only with knowledge but with skills, so that there is a practical side that they have. They also should have the research abilities, and in that sense, an ecosystem where higher education institutions must be able to provide not only knowledge but also skills, and seeing it in an integrated manner. And that again is something that the NEP seeks to address. The other important aspect is the absence of research in our undergraduate education. There is this assumption that suddenly when you complete your degree, there is a bright bulb that lights into your head, and then you suddenly become research. Research doesn't come like that. It is like making a statement that tomorrow I want to set up a world-class university. A university doesn't become world-class the moment you set it up. It has to evolve into becoming a world-class institution. In the same way, research is something, is a skill that is to be nurtured right from a very young age, because you need to instill the power of curiosity and the spirit of inquiry and the scientific temper and the rational thought to have analytical skills and critical skills. So that is something that needs to be nurtured, and we have said in the policy right from class 6 that the middle stage of education in the new paradigm of the 5+3+3+4, we are talking about a middle stage starting at class 6. At that stage, we want children to be nurturing their research skills, and that will then help them when they go into their undergraduate. And we at the undergraduate level education should not think that we are here only for dissemination of knowledge through teaching, but that we are also here to generate new knowledge and to produce new knowledge in terms of patents and publications and so on. So that part of it, that where teaching and research should not be seen as compartmentalized and should not be seen as not being connected to each other, rather they complement each other, and therefore they need to have teaching and research in undergraduate education. And if you may understand, the reason why India does not feature in the global rankings precisely comes from this reason, that we do not have research and any generation of research in undergraduate education. So this is again sought to be remedied when we are telling in our 4-year program that among the common courses, we will have research skills as being a common course. And that when we give students internship activities, it is not just related to the employability part of it, but it is also in terms of helping a student to identify a problem and find out methods how to get data to analyze that problem and arrive at maybe findings and solutions which may help to understand a case study or a survey or anything for that matter. This has to be done. This has to be actually done by our undergraduate students. It is not that only when they come to masters they get that kind of an inclination. It has to come right at school level, get I would say, more strengthened and deepened as they come into undergraduate education. Now, the other part of the challenge is as I said, the gap between knowledge and skills, resulting in many observations that our students do not have what we call as the employability skills, and that the undergraduate students who come out with a degree in hand cannot really be taken in by the corporate sector or by the business houses or by the industry, because they lack what they call the employability skills, or what we are saying are the graduate attributes. What are those graduate attributes? What we talk of communication skills, collaborative skills, and analytical skills, cognitive skills, what we normally would understand as the higher order thinking skills that students must have, so that when they come into the world of work, you are not looking at things in a theoretical manner, but are actually applying a lot of your competencies and skills to arrive at some solution or to help in the production of something or in trying to design something. It should be actually translatable kind of a thing. So these transferable skills and translatable skills, which help for greater employment opportunities, is the employability skills that they are talking about. Now, on one side, we may like to nurture that to a very great extent, but at the same time, we also would like to see whether students can set up their own enterprises. And therefore, there is a focus today on entrepreneurial education, the ability to have startups. Now, for that, you need to have within the university a lot of industry academia linkages. You need to set up what we may call as innovation clubs. You may have to set up innovation clusters, so that you are giving students ideas which can convert themselves into products, which can then be marketed and which can then come out as actually usable products. So the whole startup, the thrust towards startups is something that we would like to sort of instill in our students through entrepreneurial education, and the normal that everyone need not be a job seeker but can be a job creator, because a startup is something where you set up an enterprise and you are able to attract a number of youngsters who can start getting jobs because of your entrepreneurial abilities. And mind you, India is known for that because we are by temperament quite entrepreneurial by nature, which somehow, because of our exposure to a very structured system, got quite leveled up, or I would say almost damaged to an extent that that creativity and that ability was not there. So the thrust again is on that aspect which we are looking at. The next challenge that we are looking at, and which is affecting directly us, and where if you are looking at any analysis of higher education, they would say that the quality of teaching in higher education is poor because teachers are of a very poor quality. And that is a direct hit on you and me as teachers, because when they say that the quality of teaching is poor, and it is because the teacher is not teaching in an effective manner, it means that we need to shift two things. One, that we move towards outcome-based education and therefore focus on the learning outcomes in terms of the courses that are covered. And the other is that the teacher also needs to be equally empowered as they go along. So the need for continuous professional development through capacity building programs of training and retraining and hands-on training and so on is a critical part, rather than just saying that teachers are poor quality and therefore their quality of teaching is poor, and that is why India's higher education system is in an absolute mess. Rather than hang the teacher by the nose, which I used to say very commonly when I was in the ministry, the need to understand why a teacher cannot perform is because of the way in which we perceive how that teacher has to be conducting the class. If you are saying this is the syllabus, this is the curriculum, you complete it. You're not looking at the outcomes, you're not looking at the learning outcomes, it is unlikely that you are likely to see a shift in the quality of education. So this complete need to look at how to empower teachers, how the teachers become more effective through active learning environments and engaging with the learners in a more collaborative manner and using a lot of innovative pedagogies to hone up children's employability skills, graduate attributes, problem solving abilities, and make them independent learners is all directed to the whole idea of outcome based education, which requires us to actually shed our current methods of lecture based teaching to using flipped classrooms, to using group activities, group discussions, quizzes, studio work, which we have said in the 4-year curriculum, and completely shifting in assessing students not from their memorization and rote-based learning, but in actually giving them questions which will sort of look at their competencies, which will have get deeper understanding of how much knowledge the student has, understanding the student has, what are the competencies that they have. So you must have read 2 days back that CBC, as per the NEP, is going to go in for an open book examination. You can have an open book examination provided you don't have an answer that is directly lifted out from the textbook. That means that you're going to ask a question which provokes the students' analytical thinking, independent thinking, critical thinking, problem solving abilities, and whatever is learned is to be applied into a real life situation. That question. So it's not just the conceptual knowledge which the student memorizes and which the student then regurgitates on an answer script without having really understood or assimilated anything at all. This total change is where teachers have to really work towards it. And as I said, the gap over here is the training and the retraining that would be required. And this is very, very critical because it is also requiring us to do a lot of unlearning from what we were doing conventionally. Then comes the question of the leadership and the governance. Now, poor governance and not understanding that autonomy and accountability are all critical pillars of a very well-governed higher education system. One must understand an HEI, be it a college or be it a university or be it an institute, whatever it is, this is also an organization. And the principles of good organization in terms of planning, in terms of administration, all that will always be applicable as much as it is applicable to any organization for its effective performance, is also applicable for higher education institutions. And I'll come to those aspects of it. But critical to that for governance and management is the whole idea of an effective balance between autonomy and accountability. And that autonomy, when we say, is autonomy which is academic autonomy, administrative autonomy, financial autonomy, and at the same time, when you experience that autonomy, it cannot be that you will be not held accountable. Accountability, as we are saying, accountability to all the stakeholders, the students, the teachers, the government, all of it comes into the picture. So balancing accountability and autonomy in a very judicious manner, so as to lead higher education institutions effectively forward, is another aspect that we will try to touch upon. Now, the whole idea of leadership, because when you talk about governance and management, and you want to have good governance in an institution, the top management, that is the vice chancellors, the pro vice chancellors, the deans, the HODs, the directors, and so on, all of these who form the higher echelons of an institution must be very able leaders. And these leaders are not going to come from outside, but they must be academic leaders. So the policy insisted on the fact that all the leadership positions in educational institutions must be held by academic people and not by bureaucrats and not by industry people. So even in private universities, or even in private registered societies which run institutions, they may provide the funds, but the leadership should come. They are all academic leadership. And academic leadership calls for, I'm in a faculty and I start my career as an assistant professor, become an associate professor, then go on to becoming a professor. And my core area is only academics. But then when I take on a position as being an HOD or being a director or being a dean or being a vice chancellor or a pro vice chancellor or a registrar and so on, what happens is I am expected to have knowledge about many other things other than my own disciplinary knowledge. And that is where the huge gap comes in, where we take this plea and take cover under saying that, no, 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 I am a teacher. I don't know the rules. I don't know the regulations. You cannot say that. Moment you are going into a position of leadership, you have to get yourself knowledgeable about and becoming self-aware through reading all the rules and regulations and understanding the financial norms and the procedures and the processes that has to be followed. So academic leadership requires our own faculty, who later on go on to take up positions, to get themselves sort of knowledgeable. And here again, we are talking in terms of leadership development and training. So just as teachers need training and retraining and continuous workshops and capacity building programs, teachers who are subsequently going on to become nurtured as academic leaders, and we say that right from the starting of their academic career, moment they are assistant professors for 5 years or 7 years, we would like them also to be prepared as potential academic leaders. You can have the leadership development programs of 3 or 4 categories, one for the senior leadership, one for the middle level leadership, and one for the initiating leadership, or who are being just sort of being initiated into it. So this leadership development training is critical to success of a higher education institution. Now, given all these challenges, the national education policy has talked about a lot of governance reforms, which is of internal governance, with lot of reforms related to capacity building of teachers and academic leadership, and also talked of certain instrumentalities. But before I come to that, 2 or 3 things that I want you to understand from the actual philosophy of why NEP talked about some of the recommendations. Now, when this policy has come out in the 21st century, almost 20 years after the century, 2 or 3 fundamental changes that happen, which is to be recognized for actually being appreciating the recommendation, is that higher education institutions, any institution, forget higher education, any educational institution, be it a school or a college or a university, is actually trying to empower students and empower them so that they become productive individuals to become productive individuals, that they should be equipped with knowledge and skills and capacities that make them productive individuals. And those knowledge and skills today are seen as not only having single discipline, but that it is multidisciplinary and so on. Why it should be multidisciplinary? So character of knowledge and the character of learning, these two constructs which exist as critical components of any education, have completely got changed in the 21st century. And knowledge today is being seen as being very porous and not compartmentalized. And therefore, most of us over here come from a very structured, compartmentalized undergraduate degree. Like Sajid read that my master's is in political science and so on. So each one of you would identify yourself in your CVs as being masters in a given discipline, your PhDs in a particular discipline. We were going by the compartmentalization of degrees. Whereas when you looked at a knowledge society, the idea of a knowledge society, and this is said by none other than our own former UGC chairman, Professor Yashpal, who's an eminent physicist, in his report, where he said the porosity of knowledge, which is happening as we are entering into the 21st century, results in the realization that knowledge disciplines get interconnected with one another, and that there is seepage among knowledge disciplines, which leads to the new notions of interdisciplinarity, multidisciplinarity, cross-disciplinarity, and so on. So the construct of knowledge, as we understand from what it was in the 20th century as against that in the 21st century, is where it was seen as silo-based and compartmentalized. We no longer see it as compartmentalized, but we see that these knowledge disciplines are not existing in watertight compartments, and therefore disciplinary boundaries are getting blurred. And this results in the existing discipline becoming broader in scope or new disciplines coming into existence. The same thing happens for learning. Learning, which we understand, was understood as only the transmission of cognitive knowledge, and that is being seen as the learning to know. Whereas in a UNESCO report which talks about learning in the 21st century, the multidimensionality of learning refers to 4 pillars of learning, which is not just learning to know, which you and I are very familiar with, but also the learning to do, which is the skills and the experiential part of it. Learning to live together and to live with others, which is a part of sustainable development and sustainable societies and global citizenship and education for sustainable development, peace education. These all emanate from these 3rd pillar of learning. And the learning to be, which is the realization that each individual is quite unique in terms of their aspirations, their talents, their potentials, their capabilities, and therefore a strong case for individualization and customization, which results in the whole idea of flexible pathways and multiple trajectories. Like I just told it to Rajashekaran ji, that your graduation has 3 models, which results in 3 ways in which you complete your undergraduate. This emanates from the learning to be. Now, this part of it, because knowledge and learning changed, the whole idea of holistic multidisciplinary education, the whole idea of learning through, let us say, collaborative methods, learning in a very active environment where you want students to not only nurture their cognitive, but also their aesthetic, their artistic, their physical development, their moral development, their spiritual development. The whole idea of holistic development emanates. So it is not for a fancy, but rather it is imperative. It is almost mandatory that we move away from structured systems to flexible systems of education. And that is the resultant idea of this whole recommendations that come, where we are nurturing skill education, open and distance learning, and we are providing all this in an ecosystem which enables so that every student has a different trajectory that they can follow. It need not be that all of them identically move around. The third change, or the driver of change, is the rise of disruptive technologies. This has actually challenged the very basis in which we look at education, because if you're saying that a student is undergoing education, one purpose of that, and I'm not saying that is the only purpose, it is to take up some gainful employment. But it is also, of course, to make a person a more knowledgeable person and so on. But the most tangible one for developing countries like ours is where you directly see that I pursue a program of study in a higher education, which will lend me to get a good job. This is what we say. And this is exactly what is being demolished through disruptive technologies. Because you have artificial intelligence, robotics, machine learning, data science, augmented reality, virtual reality. What is it doing? It is actually threatening the jobs that we are performing. And the job profiles are getting completely changed. And so if you hear any conference where you have people like Bill Gates and Elon Musk and all there, they tell that if AI was going the way it is, you will not have jobs left for human beings in the coming 7 years. Now, these scenarios call for us to actually start relooking at the way we want our students to have degrees. And therefore, it is in this context that our higher education institutions should have robust academic leaders, should have a very robust governance system, and have an effective management of higher education systems. So in terms of academic leaders, we normally think that a good academic leader should have certain qualities. That is the ability to to have a vision plan or strategizing abilities, strategizing in terms of looking at the goals of your institution. How do I achieve those goals? And it can be short term, medium term, or long term. So the vision and strategy is the first part of it, and therefore the entire exercise of leaders being effective planners and effective strategists in terms of looking at their educational institution. The second is, of course, in terms of their organizational capabilities. And this is in terms of ensuring that an organization like a college or a university has multiple resources. It has the human resources, it has the infrastructural resources, it has the financial resources, it has the teaching learning resources. How are all these coordinated and sort of brought together in a manner that leads to optimal results in terms of the goals that you have envisioned for? So all our higher education institutions to which you and I belong will have a vision statement, a mission statement, and some clear objectives. In the light of the NEP, these have to be completely revisited, because what you have vision maybe in the 20th century may not be the vision that you should have in the 21st century, especially in the light of what the NEP is talking about. The third is in terms of the people management skills, and that is in terms of handling teachers, non-teaching staff, administrative staff, technical staff, having the ability to ensure that conflicts do not happen and that all people move towards a common goal. So the people management skills call for a lot of abilities of interpersonal relationships, conflict resolution, and so on, which is what happens in other organizations, and which our leaders, academic leaders, should also have that. Then dealing with the main academic work in terms of teaching and research, ensuring that as an academic institution, the best quality teaching and the best quality research is sort of nurtured on our campuses, and which means that we employ qualified faculty, we ensure that they are given the proper working conditions, we provide for all the teaching learning resources like the library, the laboratory, the computers, all infrastructure that would be required, and so also for research. Student support services, the main stakeholder, ensuring that students are seen as the main stakeholder and that you address all their requirements, not just in terms of ensuring good quality, but also their students' grievance redressal mechanism, providing all the learner support that is given to them, mentoring facilities that are given to them. These are as critical as much as the good quality teaching and research. Why I say that is because student support is the one which takes care of the mental health of the student. And today that is a major concern, because youngsters are either going for substance abuse, moving into depression, and in extreme cases, you are seeing them taking away their precious lives through an increasing number of student suicides. So the need for a very, I would say, empathetic ecosystem where you have an enabling and very welcoming student support service to address their various needs becomes very critical if of a good leader, academic leader. Then comes your financial management and administrative management, both these becoming important. As I said, one cannot, having donned a higher level of leadership position, even if you may not be thorough in it, you should have people below you who would be able to guide you properly in terms of understanding the administrative rules and regulations, as well as understanding the financial rules and regulations. In today's context, funding is a major concern, as you see a lot of limited funding coming in from governmental sources. And how do you generate new revenue or generate revenue kind of a thing, where are a misconceived notion, and for me that's a topic which is very close, as having worked in the planning commission and dealt with education budgeting and so on. The misconceived notion that we have that all revenue that is generated comes from the fees of the students, because on one side equity and inclusion do not allow us, and the affordability of higher education do not allow us to keep enhancing the fees of of our academic programs, because it should be affordable to all. You need to provide scholarships to students who cannot afford it. So fees are not the only source of revenue, which would mean you tap on alumni funding, corporate social responsibility, the CSR funds that come, private funding that can come. These are the ways in which you leverage a lot of finances for your institution, including sharing of resources. So whether institutions who are there under one, let us say, aegis of one management should have a duplication of libraries and laboratories. Can't we not think in terms of sharing it? Because sharing resources, academic resources, is one way to save on the money, and many of the ancillary services like hostels, transportation, mess facilities, which can be given to members from the industry who have a social responsibility in taking on such activities. So this two balancing without trying to enhance the fees calls for effective financial management, and we who become academic leaders must be very much aware that these are the ways in which we can look at it. The next dimension is in terms of internationalization of higher education. So a point that I left out when talking about student support is the aspect of equity and diversity, and the need that we nurture a very inclusive atmosphere in our higher education institutions and not discriminate students on the basis of their caste or religion or language or their social status or their economic status. And therefore, student support also looks at all those dimensions also. And coming now to the whole idea of internationalization. So today, collaboration, as I told at the beginning, collaboration within institutions, within our own country, where we are talking in terms of that being critical to multidisciplinarity, as well as collaboration with foreign universities, both for teaching and for research, is a parameter that is now being given a kind of a weightage, both for your accreditation and both for your ranking. So we are trying to promote this whole idea of internationalization of higher education, because you cannot go on looking at a very huge drain of students who leave India to go abroad, and we are unable to attract students to come into our own campuses. And it's not a difficult task at all. The topic on internationalization of higher education must have dealt with it, because I am not able to have the time to really jump into that arena. But dual degrees, joint degrees, twinning programs, setting up an international students office, ensuring that we are able to provide a facilitation center, mobility among the students, among the faculty through exchange programs, a number of things which needs to be done, because you are looking at today education not from a localized point of view alone, not from a regional point and not from a national point, but from a very global perspective. And therefore, that global perspective can come when you have an internationalization of the curricula, and when you look in terms of our students not looking for jobs necessarily only here, but also looking at multinational companies and going abroad. So in that whole context, academic leaders must have to be oriented in that direction, because these are the new demands that comes into the play for the higher education institutions. So this is about academic leadership, but leadership development programs, training programs must come in, because getting trained into all these aspects, you can't just hear it and just become academic leaders. You need to know how to go about it, acquiring all the kind of knowledge and understanding to be able to do the visioning and the strategizing in an effective manner. Now, coming to an instrumentality that I was wanting to tell you in terms of effective governance. Firstly, we said in terms of internal governance that all higher education institutions must have effective internal governing bodies. So currently we have the executive bodies, we have the Senate, the nomenclatures can vary, they can be called the Board of Management, then you have your academic council, you have your planning board, you have your finance committee. These are all internal governing bodies. But we have said beyond this in the policy that every institution should have an empowered board of governors, which is to be sort of created by the institution from people who belong to that institution, where you can have student representatives, teacher representatives, the senior academic leaders, the civil society, industry, the scientific community, parents, all of these coming together and being a part of a kind of a collegiate body, which looks at maybe what should be the vision and mission of that institution. And therefore, it is collegiate, it is also democratic, it is also transparent, but it will not have, as far as possible, government representatives and bureaucrats, because we would like to minimize the governmental interference. Now, here, one instrument that every HEI must be able to prepare, as we wrote in the policy, is what we call is an institutional development plan. And what is an institutional development? Nothing much except that it is a strategic plan of action or an action plan for looking at your institution in terms of where you would like to see it going forward in 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, or 10 years. So we all have to prepare. And as I said at the beginning, we all have colleges and universities which put a vision statement, a mission statement, and some goals. We've created it. It was frozen and we have forgotten about it. It is there displayed somewhere in the institution, or it is there on the website. It has to be revisited. Just as the goals of higher education, the vision that we want to achieve, and what is our mission that we look to achieving that vision has to be seen or revisited in the light of the changing requirements of what we articulated in the policy. So when we say NEP is saying about access, equity, quality, affordability, accountability, when it says that it is to transform India into a knowledge power and to also ensure that we are having a value-loaded kind of, value-driven kind of an education system, but at the same time, it is very modern and scientific. You need to look at all this, including the idea of multidisciplinarity, holistic education. In this whole light, this vision, mission, and goals and objectives must be revisited. So the IDP is only a plan of action, which will not only help you to do that, but will also make you to do an internal exercise of a SWOT analysis. What are my institution's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats or challenges? So we are saying move towards multidisciplinarity. Do we have faculty that we can get if we go towards multidisciplinarity? Can we have the physical infrastructure? Can we have the infrastructural infra? So a SWOT analysis. And then you come to your key strategic goals. And what are your performance indicators in those key strategic goals? And what steps or actions you take within a time-bound timeline period to achieve it. So an IDP actually helps all of us, and it is to be a collegiate exercise. You can have a small task force which takes care of that activity, but this document is prepared After taking in the feedback of faculty, of a few parents or parent-teacher association representatives, a few student representatives, and this document is firmed up. But it is, though firmed up, it is a live document, which as you start achieving the milestones that you have laid down, you will realize that you may have to make some modifications and corrections. So simple thing, we said in the policy that the gross enrollment ratio must reach 50% by 2035. You come to your institution and you look at what your student enrollment is. You also try and look at the equity part of it. How many students from the SCDGs, the SCs, the STs, the OBCs, the linguistic and religious minorities, women, transgenders, children with disabilities, urban poor, how many of them are there in that? So you see the access part of it, you see the equity part. Then you look in terms of how you can add on to that enrollment, or do you see a diminishing enrollment? If so, what are the strategies needed? Same way as you look at that from the access point of view, you look at it from the equity, then from quality. What is it that we have? Infrastructure. What are the teaching learning resources? What are the library resources that we have? What are the qualifications of our faculty? How are we accredited? How are we getting ranked? These all parameters for the quality input, research part of it. All these parameters come over here. So this kind of an exercise is one which is necessary so that there is a focused strategy and an action plan or a plan of action so that we move with our institution. And as I said, it has to be a collective exercise by the entire institution. You can have a small task force, but it is done through a very democratic participation, always seeking their opinions and making the different drafts available so that people can put in and give in their inputs, holding one-day sessions with the faculty, with the members of the parent-teacher association, with a few members of the civil society, getting reputed academicians in your vicinity, scientific community, industry people, all these coming together. So what you see is a higher education institution does not exist in an isolation. It is there for improving the quality of life of a community around it and empowering the main stakeholders who are the students and the teachers as the catalyst for that change. And when you do this exercise, your institution also becomes more, I would say, qualitatively a better one. So when you talk in terms of internal governance and leadership, you need to look at these dimensions. And I'll just stop with this whole idea of the changes in the affiliation system, where we have said that by hopefully by 2035, we would wean away from affiliating systems, where you can have, through a very gradual process, we will have degree granting autonomous colleges. So I'm talking about around 45,000 colleges. We will not convert all 45,000 colleges into degree granting colleges. Some of them will come together in a cluster arrangement. Some of them can become autonomous colleges themselves. Some of them can come together to form a teaching university. These are some arrangements that are possible. And this will be through handholding by the host university, by mentoring from the host university, from the state government, and through a very gradual process of graded benchmarking and accreditation and standard setting, that we want to do this handholding to reduce the number of affiliated colleges. Ideally, we want that there should be no affiliating colleges, and colleges which are in rural areas, they become constituent colleges rather than affiliated colleges, thereby making our higher education institutions quite independent governing institutions. But as I said, it's a long way ahead. We are talking about a long window up to 2035, maybe even 2040. But it is a reform that is essential to have very effective governance and very good quality higher education institutions. I think I'll stop over here and open myself up to interaction so that we can take up any untouched areas. There was someone who raised hand in between. That person can ask the question now.
Thank you, ma'am, for such an elaborated lecture. So, my friends, ma'am is still available for another couple of minutes. So, it's a very nice opportunity. If you have any doubt or any confusion or any question, anything you want to ask, ma'am is available for us. So, please ask the questions. Ranjan sir, yeah.
Yes, yes, sir. So today I'm feeling like not feeling. It's a reality that I'm in direct connection with the NEP, or people concern. So really, ma'am, I've never been introduced to a personality who can say that this is the person, this is Shakila ma'am, who is directly in connection with the NEP, or these are the people who has drafted the NEP, right? So in that sense, I'm very lucky, and that is why actually I talk a lot. Sajid sir knows it. Ma'am, this very topic, I mean, academic leadership, governance, and management. This is, I feel like, more related to the people of management principles. So we teachers, as teachers, have attended many programs on NEP for the last 2-3 years from 2020, I remember. But I have not seen any program, mandatory programs or optional program being arranged for the principals of the colleges, especially newly appointed principals. So I request, ma'am, because right now you're a direct person who is directly connected or related to the NAV, to arrange this type of 1 week or any short-term program specifically on this topic for the newly appointed principals, so that they understand the things. I feel I know more than our principals on these things, but I'm not a concerned person to implement this.
Yeah.
Generally,
No,
principals do not attend these type of programs.
No,
So I
we are
request you,
actually
Auntie.
contemplating that. Actually, what is happening is that the leadership in colleges really need to get this kind of training, and there is now a rising demand that is coming in, because NEP cannot become a reality unless the principals of colleges, the directors of institutions, HODs, deans, and others get sensitized on these various aspects. They are still sitting with an old mindset where they are not saying one department can collaborate with another. Then we cannot have NEP becoming successful. So we are contemplating that. I understand that with this NMTT, the Madan Mohan Malviya teacher training program, another dimension that is being thought of is in the works of trying this kind of leadership programs. But let me also tell you that not just the UGC colleges, which are the HRDCs and the NMTT centers which are there, but there are many other institutions which do a lot of leadership development programs. Like we have the National Institutes for Technical Teachers Training, NITERS, they conduct it, and the Academic Staff College, the Administrative Staff College of India, ASCII, and related bodies like that, they keep conducting. But only thing is, we don't link it to saying that this many principals should attend it. Now here there is this whole nexus. Just as principals don't spare you all for your training programs, the principals say their universities are not allowing the principals because the principals cannot go away. So when we conducted a leadership development program, we kept it minimal to 3 days so that it is not affecting the daily running of an institution. We are quite seized about it. And now I would say that because we moved online, that was prior to COVID, we can even think of even having it in a blended mode, only 1.5 days, and the rest 1.5 days can be online. But yes, it has to be provided, because if they sit with the old mindset and teachers are sensitized but they are not sensitized, then there is a complete mismatch and a gap that cannot be filled in. I fully appreciate your point of view, Ranjan.
Thank you, ma'am. So Ranjan sir has asked a very pertinent question. So is there any other question from any other participant? Manjeet ma'am, Safina ma'am, do you have any question?
No, no, sir.
Okay.
It was a wonderful session.
Definitely. इलियास सर कुछ पूछना चाहते हैं?
No, Professor. Very useful session for us. We understand a lot.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. So, any other question from any other participant?
हाँ मैडम नमस्कार, मैं राम दर्शन बोल रहा हूँ।
जी बोलिए दर्शन सर।
हाँ मैडम, ये जो कोलैबोरेशन की बात हो रही है विभिन्न संस्थानों के बीच में, तो इसको कैसे गवर्नेंस करें? जैसे कि बड़े बड़े संस्थान हमारे यहाँ 2-4 ही हैं, जैसे आपका अलीगढ़ मुस्लिम विश्वविद्यालय हुआ, बीएचयू हुआ, जेएनयू हुआ, तो इनसे कोलैबोरेशन तो बड़े बड़े विश्वविद्यालय कर सकते हैं, परंतु जो है जो छोटे विश्वविद्यालय हैं उनको कोई भाव देता नहीं है। तो छोटे विश्वविद्यालयों से अगर हम वहाँ विदेश में, जैसे कि बहुत विश्वविद्यालय जैसे 4,000-5,000 कल सर ने बताया था कि अमेरिका में ही विश्वविद्यालय, तो उसमें बहुत इसी तरह से होंगे जैसे हमारे यहाँ हैं, तो उनसे हम संबंध ऐसा कोलैबोरेशन करके क्या करेंगे? उनसे तो आगे केवल यहाँ डिग्री बांटेंगे। तब इस स्थिति में एनईपी का जो गवर्नेंस है वो कितना सफल होगा?
नहीं, राम दर्शन जी, आप कौन से संस्था में सिखाते हैं और क्या विषय सिखाते हैं आप?
मैडम, मैं हिंदी पढ़ाता हूँ।
अच्छा, और कौन से विश्वविद्यालय में है या विद्यालय में?
मैडम इस समय रज्जू भैया विश्वविद्यालय इलाहाबाद से संबद्ध है, फतेहपुर में हूँ, राजकीय महिला महाविद्यालय है।
महाविद्यालय जी। तो ये जो हम नेशनल एजुकेशन पॉलिसी में जो बताए गए रिकमेंडेशन है, ये हम जब बनाए हैं, हमें ये जानकारी है कि अपने कंट्री में संस्थाएं अलग अलग किस्म के हैं, जो ग्रामीण क्षेत्र में है और बहुत ही रूरल एरियाज में जहाँ एजुकेशन को अवेलेबल करते हैं। वो हो सकता है कि वो जो हायर एंड इंटरनेशनल कोलैबोरेशन की बात होती है वो शायद उनको लागू नहीं हो सकती है, लेकिन आपके संस्था में भी जो बच्चे आते हैं ग्रामीण क्षेत्र से, उनको भी मल्टी डिसिप्लिनरिटी की एजुकेशन मिलने की हक है, क्योंकि आज के दिन में अगर उन्होंने एजुकेशन हासिल की है तो ज्यादातर हम एजुकेशन हासिल करते हैं कुछ नौकरी के लिए। जब नौकरी आज के दिन में, जब आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस, रोबोटिक्स जैसे चीज आ गए हैं जिसमें नौकरियां किस तरह के होंगे इसके ही जानकारी नहीं है, तो हमारी तरफ से ये कहना कि नहीं हमारी संस्था छोटा है, हमारी विश्वविद्यालय छोटा है, हमने ये गाइडलाइंस लेके आए हैं कि आपकी अगर कॉलेज छोटी है और आपके यहाँ पे कुछ ही विषय सिखाते हैं, तो आप उसी विसिनिटी में, उसी आसपास 5 या 7 या 10 किलोमीटर के रेंज में कोई और संस्था है जिसके साथ आप कोलैबोरेट कर सकते, तो प्लीज कोलैबोरेट करें, क्योंकि आप का मेन, आप किसके हित के लिए हम एजुकेशन प्रोवाइड करते हैं? हम अपने छात्रों के हित के लिए हम एजुकेशन प्रोवाइड करते हैं। जब हम छात्रों के हित के बारे में सोचते हैं तो हम हमारी संस्था में जो कमियां हैं ये हम उबर के नहीं लेके आ सकते हैं। हमें ये सोचना है कि हमारी जो कमियां है इसको किस तरह से यूजीसी या एआईसीटी ने जो हमें एक ऑप्शन दिया गया है कि कोलैबोरेट करना है, नहीं, हमें अपना कंफर्ट जोन से निकलना ही नहीं है, हमें जैसे हम करके आए थे वही करना है और हम चेंज करना ही नहीं चाहते। ये गलत तरीका होती है, क्योंकि चेंज करना ही है, क्योंकि हमारे टाइम में जो नौकरियां मिलती है, हमारे छात्र जब बाहर जाएंगे उन्हें हो सकता है नौकरियां नहीं मिलेगी। इंडिया में सबसे बड़ी आबादी है और सबसे बड़ी आबादी के साथ साथ सबसे ज्यादा युवा लोग ज्यादा है, यूथ जो हम बोलते हैं, जिसका एवरेज एज जस्ट 27 ईयर्स है। इतने सारे जब यूथ पॉपुलेशन है और ये यूथ पॉपुलेशन अनएम्प्लॉयड रहेंगे तो वो एक डिजास्टर हो जाएगी। जब हम बोलते हैं कि इंडिया एक थर्ड वर्ल्ड पावर बनने वाली है और एक 5 ट्रिलियन इकोनॉमी की तरफ हम मूव कर रहे हैं, और जापान, कोरिया, चाइना, सारे यूरोपियन कंट्रीज में लोग, बुजुर्ग लोग बैठे हुए हैं जहां पे वो लोग जॉब्स करने के लिए केपेबल नहीं है, इंडिया ही जो ह्यूमन कैपिटल है वो प्रोवाइड करने वाली है। तो हमारे ऊपर एक जिम्मेदारी आ जाती है कि हम हमारे छात्रों को उस तरह के नॉलेज और स्किल्स में उन्हें माहिर करें ताकि वो जाके ये जॉब्स लेकर सकते हैं। तो हम अपने लिमिटेड स्कोप से ना देखते हुए और हमारे संस्था में जो कमियां हैं उसको किस तरह से हम उभर के आएंगे, ये सारे गाइडलाइंस के हिसाब से, इसके लिए हम कोशिश करना चाहिए। बट ये डेफिनेट है कि जो एएमयू कर सकती है या कुछ जेएनयू कर सकती है, हो सकता है कि आपके विद्यालय करने में बहुत टाइम लगती है, ये हमें जानकारी है। हर एक स्टेट अपने अपने लेवल के प्रिपेयर्डनेस है, हर एक इंस्टीट्यूशन अपने अपने लेवल के प्रिपेयर्डनेस है। हम वन साइज फिट ऑल ये नहीं कहते हैं, हम अलग अलग मॉडल्स की बात कर रहे हैं जो आपको एप्लीकेबल है उसी तरह से, और जितने आपके तरफ से चेंज हो सकती है, लेकिन चेंज की तरफ मूव करना ये बहुत जरूरी पड़ती है।
धन्यवाद मैडम, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
थैंक यू मैम, थैंक यू। सो एनी अदर क्वेश्चन? किसी ने हैंड रेज किया था? एनीवन वांट टू आस्क एनी क्वेश्चन? या चौधरी साहब,
मे आई?
या श्योर प्लीज।
आई जस्ट वांट टू नो कि लाइक हम लोगों के प्राइवेट इंस्टीट्यूट्स जो हैं, प्राइवेट इंस्टीट्यूट्स में और गवर्नमेंट इंस्टीट्यूट्स में थोड़ा सा प्रॉब्लम आता है। अगर प्राइवेट इंस्टीट्यूट्स में कोई इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर है, कोई फैसिलिटी नहीं है, जब हम लोग गवर्नमेंट इंस्टीट्यूट से अपने छात्रों के हितों के लिए सपोर्ट मांगते हैं तो सरकार के जो इंस्टीट्यूट्स हैं बहुत ज्यादा सपोर्ट नहीं करते हैं। क्या ऐसी कोई गाइडलाइन है जिसमें कि हम लोग राइटफुली उन लोगों से रिक्वेस्ट कर सकें?
तो एज फार एज द पॉलिसी इज कंसर्न, हमने ये क्लियरली बताया है कि
जी।
पब्लिक संस्था हो या प्राइवेट संस्था हो, दोनों को एक ही लेंस से देखा जाना चाहिए, क्योंकि प्राइवेट और पब्लिक दोनों स्टूडेंट्स के लिए एजुकेशन प्रोवाइड करती है। हमने जो गाइडलाइंस लेके आए हैं, ट्रांसफॉर्मिंग इंस्टीट्यूशंस इनटू मल्टीडिसिप्लिनरी इंस्टीट्यूशंस, इसमें हमने क्लियरली बताया है कि कोलैबोरेशन में क्लियर कट नॉर्म्स और गाइडलाइंस के हिसाब से एक पब्लिक फंडेड इंस्टीट्यूशन एंड अ प्राइवेट इंस्टीट्यूशन कैन डेफिनेटली कोलैबोरेट टुगेदर with having a common fee committee, common timetable committee, common administrative committee kind of a thing. So have a look at those guidelines, because as far as the policy is concerned, we are agreeing and accepting that right from school education to higher education to technical education, professional education, there is the role of the private sector. And only thing we don't want is the private sector institution should not treat education as a commercial activity and divert funds as if it is a profit-making venture to do other than educational activities, what we call commercialization of education. Except for that, which we are saying we will take punitive action, we have not been against the spirit of private institutions, and we would very much like private institutions and public funded institutions coming together in a larger interest. It can not only be for academic delivery, it can also be for research, and the whole idea of public and private coming together has been very well accepted in the NEP and in these guidelines. तो आप definitely वो guidelines follow कीजिए। हमने ये भी बताया गया है कि जो PPP जो एजुकेशन सेक्टर में होना है, ये भी हमें एक्सेप्टेबल है। जब हम प्राइवेट इंडस्ट्री को बोलते हैं कि आप हॉस्टल्स रन करो, तो वहां पे भी प्राइवेट आ गया है। तो प्राइवेट कॉलेजेस और प्राइवेट पब्लिक फंडेड इंस्टीट्यूशंस दोनों को एक साथ लेके आने में कोई दिक्कत नहीं होनी चाहिए, और उसके जो नियम है और जो गाइडलाइंस है उसी हिसाब से होनी चाहिए, ताकि दोनों को एक म्यूचुअल सेम लेवल पे, ऐसा ना हो कि प्राइवेट अपर हैंड रहे या अपर, दोनों it should be at the same level, it should be at a even level. That is what we are trying to, and that has to be worked out. It is a difficult task because agreeing to come together between two entities whose funding sources are different. Firstly, your college, in terms of recognition, in terms of accreditation, all these norms have to be filled in so that that public funded institution does not feel hesitant to collaborate with a private institution.
Thank you. Thank you so much for madam for your wonderful suggestions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. So, is there any other question? Ranjan
Yes,
sir?
जी सर। सर जैसे कि NEP में जो 4th year ऑनर्स स्टूडेंट्स है, तो उनके लिए we need research guides, PhD guides, right? So there is availability of research guides in our colleges. मैक्सिमम है नहीं, तो मैम कैसा ऐसा हो सकता है जो
बैचलर्स विद ऑनर्स नहीं, बैचलर्स विद रिसर्च के लिए आप बता रहे हैं?
रिसर्च के लिए
बैचलर्स विद रिसर्च, एक्चुअली बैचलर्स विद रिसर्च is not a walk-in from your 3rd year, because only those, as I said, with a CGPA of 7.5. But we have said that जहाँ पे colleges के संस्थाओं में जहाँ research guides नहीं है, तो वो जो यूनिवर्सिटी के जो डिपार्टमेंट्स होते हैं उनकी तरफ से जो हम रिसोर्सेज ले सकते हैं, बट ऑफ कोर्स दिस इज सब्जेक्ट टू अवेलेबिलिटी ऑफ पीएचडी गाइड्स इन दैट यूनिवर्सिटी. देयर इज अ लिमिटेशन देयर. यस,
मेरा कहना ये था मैम, तो जिस कॉलेजेस में जिन लोगों का पीएचडी नहीं है, मेरा नहीं है,
हाँ,
तो हमें कहने के लिए अभी थोड़ा जो स्टडी लीव है कोर्स वर्क के लिए 6 महीने का,
हाँ, हाँ.
उनका थोड़ा कुछ प्रावधान कर दिया तो हमारे लिए अच्छा हो जाता.
वो तो एग्जिस्टिंग जो नियम है वही एप्लीकेबल है, वो एनईपी से रिलेटेड नहीं होती है. जो एग्जिस्टिंग नियम है जहाँ पे
फिर भी आप लोग रिकमेंड कर
स्टडी
सकते हैं
लीव और ये सब फैसिलिटीज जो है दैट इज सब्जेक्ट टू आप ही के डिपार्टमेंट में अगर 3-4 कलीग्स है तो 3-4 कलीग से बात करके उन्हें समझाना चाहिए कि आप 3 अगर कुछ मैनेज करेंगे तो मेरा 2 साल का स्टडी लीव में मेरा भी पीएचडी हो सकती है. बट दैट हैज नथिंग टू डू विद पीएचडी विद द एनईपी, बट आई एम श्योर यू शुड बी एबल टू मैनेज दैट आल्सो, रंजन.
Thank you, ma'am. So, is there any other question from any participant? My friends, do you want to ask any question? So, I think, ma'am, there is no question.
Okay, no problem,
So, ma'am-
Rajat. I think they have interacted, and
Yeah.
if there is anything, then they as an afterthought that comes to their mind, they can send it to you. You can always check with me, or I can always cover it by email to you also. No problem.
Sure, ma'am. Sure, ma'am. So, on behalf of UGC HRDC, on behalf of my participants, and on behalf of myself, ma'am, I'm highly grateful to you. I know, ma'am, you are quite busy, but still you got time for us, and you have delivered such a wonderful lecture. And ma'am, whenever I listen to you, some new facet of NEP come to my mind. I don't know about my participant, but I can guarantee that whenever I listen to you, some new facet of NEP 2020 comes to my mind. So thank you, ma'am, very much. And I think we are planning the next workshop from 4th of March, ma'am. So still it is not clear, but we are planning from 4th of March. So ma'am, in that context, we will contact.
Sure.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you very much, and all of you stay blessed and take care, and make this pledge to
Thank you,
yourself
ma'am.
that I will change for NEP compliance. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you,
Thank you so much, ma'am.
जी,
Thank
प्रीति
you.
मैम,
Thank you, ma'am.
प्रतिमा मैम, कैसा रहा सेशन आज का बताइए?
Very nice session, sir.
हाँ, रंजन सर. So you people, Yogendra sir, you people have enjoyed the session?
Yes, sir. This session is very effective and
हाँ,
interesting.
हाँ, because she is the person who has drafted NEP 2020 and she is quite busy. बहुत busy रहती है मैम, फिर भी बेचारी हमारे लिए वक्त निकाल लेती है किसी तरीके से.
जी
So thank you very much. You were quite interactive.
Namaskar, sir.
Namaskar.
Namaskar, sir. May I audible? Actually,
Yeah,
after
sure.
after FIP 19, it's again good to hear some important aspects of NEP from Shamsu madam. It's an amazing session. It's an amazing session. We have thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah. In fact, since she has drafted this whole NEP, so she is well versed with the philosophy of NEP. So that's why on any topic, if she talks, so many aspects of NEP 2020 comes to our mind. So that's why we request her to come in every workshop. In fact.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Sir.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So it is 6. Go and have a cup of tea, my friends. Be fresh, and then join latest by 6:30. Another resource person will come, and I'm quite sure you will also enjoy his session. So thank you very much for being with us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.